Imagine waking up one morning to find that 35 brand new homes have been built, not next to your property, not even on a shared boundary, but squarely on your own legally owned land. The
We
Homeowners
believe that this
Association,
project
drunk on
truly
power and
captures the spirit
arrogance,
of
had pushed
community.
their boundaries so far that they thought they could erase mine. But they didn't count on one thing: the dam. A silent, looming wall of water I had built years earlier, holding back the flow that could change everything. And when the pressure reached its peak, so did my patience. What happens when a man with nothing left to lose finally opens the floodgates? The story begins in what looked like the picture of suburban peace. A gated community tucked neatly on the edge of rolling farmland, lined with identical homes boasting manicured lawns and freshly painted shutters. People moved here for safety, order, and the promise of a clean neighborhood free from chaos. On the surface, it was everything the brochures promised. Families barbecued on weekends, children rode their bikes in cul-de-sacs, and homeowners compared lawn treatments like badges of pride. My land sat right at the edge of this development, 50 acres of fertile ground passed down to me from my father. He had farmed it for decades, and when he passed, I decided to hold on to it. While others around me sold their plots to developers and moved away, I stayed. To me, this land wasn't just dirt and grass. It was memory. It was legacy. It was the one thing left in this world that truly belonged to me. And yet, from the day the HOA was formed, I could feel the walls closing in. The board members eyed my property as if it were an unclaimed prize waiting to be seized. They called it underutilized land. They hinted at community expansion. They suggested that maybe I should consider joining the HOA to align with neighborhood standards. At first, I brushed it off. After all, I wasn't in their gates. My land was separate, my rules, my life. But the whispers didn't stop. The HOA began sending letters, thinly veiled suggestions dressed up as warnings. They told me my fence was unsightly. They complained about the sound of my tractor. They even said my barn didn't meet community aesthetics. Every letter carried a sharper edge, though none of it made legal sense. I wasn't under their jurisdiction. I wasn't part of their little kingdom. Still, they pushed. Neighbors began treating me differently. At block parties, I wasn't invited. At the grocery store, conversations stopped when I walked past. The HOA had painted me as the outsider, the stubborn holdout standing in the way of their vision for the community. But I held firm. I worked my land. I maintained my dam, a project my father had started decades earlier to control flooding. That dam was more than just earth and stone. It was a safeguard for my crops, my home, and my way of life. I had no idea just how important it would become. The first real sign of trouble came one morning when I saw surveyor stakes planted deep into my soil. Bright orange flags fluttered in the wind, marking lines that cut across my fields. I hadn't ordered a survey, and no one had asked my permission. When I called the county, they told me a development permit had been filed for new homes. On my land, I drove straight to the HOA office, furious. The board president, a man named Richard Hall, met me with the kind of smug grin only a man with too much power and too little accountability could wear. He claimed the land was miszoned, that records showed it as community property. I shoved my deed across his desk, proof of my ownership. Richard barely looked at it. He leaned back, hands folded, and said, "These things have a way of working themselves out." But they didn't work out. Construction crews arrived within weeks, tearing into the soil, laying foundations, and pouring concrete. I filed complaints. I went to the county office. I hired lawyers. But paperwork moved slow, and the HOA moved fast. Within months, homes began to rise. Shiny new model houses advertised as Phase 2 of the community expansion. Families moved in. Children played in what had once been my fields. And the HOA sent me a letter demanding that I remove unauthorized farm equipment from community property. My tractor, on my land. The gaslighting was relentless. They fined me for leaving hay bales visible to neighbors. They accused me of trespassing when I walked my own boundaries. One board member even called the sheriff when I tried to stop a construction crew from tearing down my fence. Though I had the deed in hand, the officer shrugged, said it was a civil matter, and left. Each day, my grip on my land seemed to loosen, not by law but by brute force and arrogance. But through it all, the dam stood, towering at the edge of my property, holding back the reservoir that stretched like a coiled serpent behind it. My father had built it to protect against floods, but I maintained it like a sentinel. The HOA hated it. They called it a hazard. They demanded I dismantle it. I refused. They even tried to fine me for unauthorized water storage. But the dam was perfectly legal, inspected, and approved years before their community ever existed. Every insult, every letter, every trespass pushed me closer to the edge. I documented everything, built a case thicker than a phone book. But as the legal battle dragged on, the homes multiplied. 35 houses in total, all perched like parasites on land that wasn't theirs. My land. And still, the HOA pressed harder. Richard once sneered at me during a meeting, saying, "You can't fight progress. You'll thank us one day." But progress has a price. And they had no idea what they were about to pay. Every insult, every letter, every trespass pushed me closer to the edge. I documented everything, built a case thicker than a phone book. But as the legal battle dragged on, the homes multiplied. 35 houses in total, all perched like parasites on land that wasn't theirs. My land. And still, the HOA pressed harder. Richard once sneered at me during a meeting, saying, "You can't fight progress. You'll thank us one day." But progress has a price. And they had no idea what they were about to pay. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the wall of water straining behind the dam. In that moment, I made my choice. If they wanted to erase my land, I would remind them whose soil they stood on. I threw the release lever. With a roar like thunder, the gates opened. Water surged forward, unstoppable, carving its path across the stolen land. Foundations crumbled. Lawns disappeared under the torrent. Cars floated like toys. The very homes they had built on my property sank beneath the flood they had mocked for years. The board members screamed, scrambling for higher ground. Richard's face went pale as the realization hit. Their arrogance had drowned them. The dam they tried to destroy had destroyed them instead. The flood made headlines for weeks. News crews circled the wreckage, capturing images of half-submerged houses and devastated families. The HOA spun the story, of course, painting me as reckless, dangerous, a man who had unleashed destruction on innocent people. But the county records told another truth. The homes had been illegally built. The permits were fraudulent. The land was mine, every inch of it. Investigations followed. The HOA crumbled under lawsuits. Richard Hall, once the smug king of the neighborhood, was dragged into court, accused of fraud, forgery, and misuse of funds. Families who had bought homes on my land sued him too, demanding restitution. The empire he built on arrogance collapsed overnight. As for me, I faced my own battles. Insurance companies balked. Lawyers circled. For a while, I became the villain in the public eye. But slowly, as evidence surfaced, the narrative shifted. I wasn't a monster who unleashed a flood. I was a man pushed past his breaking point by greed and corruption. The dam stood, scarred but unbroken, a monument to resilience. My land was mine again, though forever changed by what had happened. Fields that once grew crops now bore the marks of rushing water. But in those scars lay freedom. I rebuilt not just the land but my life. And I learned something in the process. HOAs, with their petty rules and manufactured power, only thrive when people roll over. Stand firm, and their empire of paper crumbles. The neighborhood never fully recovered. Families moved out, the market value plummeted, and the once pristine community became a ghost of its former self. Richard Hall never returned. And every time I walk past that dam, I remember the night I opened the gates, not just of water, but of justice. So, the next time someone tells you an HOA is just about keeping up appearances, remember this: appearances can drown.